survived his hometown event, and now he's on to his favorite event. We got the JDC. What say you? This is the best stretch of golf for the whole year for you, right?
It really is like the best event of the year in my hometown. And then we follow it up with like literally the fifth major, the John Deere Classic. A little disappointed with all these young big hitters in the field, though. I really prefer the days of Steve Stricker, Zach Johnson, like when they ran things around Deer Run. But
It's a new age, man.
yeah, we'll see how these young guys do here.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, obviously, Detroit was and then your event was whatever. But my God, that finish on Sunday, for not really caring, it was spectacular golf. Obviously, that shot by Bryson was unreal.
Yeah, the old man Bryson trying to
Yeah,
take down the youngsters. It's like, God, the game is so crazy in the last couple of years. Like, just the amount of young talent is awesome. I mean, it's wild. You think about like guys like Rahm and Bryson, they feel like old compared to
ancient. Speed is
Hovland,
beyond ancient.
Morikawa, Wolf, all these guys. So yeah, it's golf. I think we're set up pretty good going forward.
Yeah, Neiman feels old at this point. And he's 20, so
Yeah.
we certainly are. It was a pretty eventful, like I said. Obviously, Wolf broke through. Insane. All three of them, nobody lost it. Like Morikawa, both those putts I thought should have went in. Bryson did what he needed to do. Uh, Crazy, but yeah, now we got another one. Then we go to obviously to Northern Ireland next week, but we do have the JDC here, and like you said, we've got. I mean, I don't know. We'll dig into the pricing in a second. It's pretty crazy to see this, but before that, talk about your course here. I mean, they're going to tear it apart, are they not?
Yeah, TPC Deer Run. It's about a 7,250 yard par 71, but I mean, perennially like one of the easiest tracks on tour. We saw Michael Kim get to minus 27 last year with that outrageous putting performance. But I mean, every year, I mean, it's literally one of the easiest courses year in and year out. I'm interested to see how it plays because really, I mean, it's really favored kind of the short hitters and the old guys. I mean, Stricker had an amazing record here. Zach Johnson, amazing record. But like we've said, the game has changed. So now we have Hovland, Morikawa, Wolf, Neiman, all these guys at the top who, they're a different type of player. And it seems like off the tee and length is just, all these guys have it and it's super important. But this just hasn't been a course that's rewarded that type of play. But I mean, these are the best players in the field. And there's just not that like Snedeker or somebody in the field who I feel like, well, this is really his course and he's playing well. So, yeah, I'm interested to see whether these guys who, seem to thrive on longer courses and rely on length, how they fare here. Because this hasn't traditionally been a course that's rewarded that type of play, but these are the best players in the field.
It's true. It is kind of odd. Obviously, it's very generous fairways. It's not like you can't pull driver. It's just like you said, if you look at, and we have a ton of course history to look at, it hasn't been those guys. Zach Johnson basically makes a living at this course these days, and all those types. Obviously, that's not a bomber by any stretch, but these guys, I mean, it seems like every one of these kids, that comes up, it's, their driving is ridiculous. It's, 330, no problem. And then when they putt, they're just dominant. So we'll see. I guess we'll just dive into it. I don't really have anything else to say. Obviously, before we do, Streelman withdrew. He got into the Open. He wouldn't have been here like everyone else who's normal is pretty much in Scotland.
Thank God Streelman withdrew.
Yeah, that would have been a problem.
Just the amount of trying to play that 10K Streelman, that would have just something bad would have happened.
There's no doubt. I wish a lot of other people would withdraw. I think we're going to have to deal with the rest. But so now we only have 4 guys above 10K. And I think combined, they're about 80 years old. It's absurd. We've got Hovland, Morikawa, Wolf, and the ancient Joaquin Neiman at this point. So what say you? It's obviously, like we said, these are the young guns and best players in the field.
Yeah, I mean, this is really rough. I think everybody's going to have the same problem this week. All 4 of these guys. Well, we'll say the 3 like brand new guys. I mean, it's really tough to wrap your head around that price. Wolf was amazing last week, but he hadn't been playing that well and was pretty inconsistent. Morikawa has been consistent, and then he obviously put in a winning effort last week. Very easily could have won that. And Hovland is the most expensive. He's been probably the most consistent, but he hasn't it sounds dumb to say he hasn't finished in the top 10 because he's played amazing, but he hasn't really contended yet, and that's crazy to think about with the most expensive player in the field. I'm not really a fan of any of these three guys. I guess if I had to go all the way up, it would be Niemann, who we've seen a little bit more of, and he's been consistently playing well. 23rd last week, T5 the few weeks before that. The ball striking, it's been 6 or 7 weeks in a row of really good ball striking. And we have, a year plus sample size on Niemann, plus the great amateur pedigree that all these other guys have. Although I do question some of that amateur pedigree in South America.
Yeah.
That's another argument. So I guess Niemann would be my guy at the top, but I'm really probably going to go balanced. I think a lot of people are going to go balanced this week.
I think so too. If I had to pick of these new three, I would go all the way to Hovland. I know he has, like you said, if you really look at his finishes, yeah, it's not like he's been great. It's just he hasn't been as stellar as the other two. Most of that was done last week, though. And if you look, he really hasn't putted much. He putted well in Detroit, but other than that, it's been ice cold around the green and putting. Maybe he's just not a great putter. I have no idea. But it's hard to argue when you're gaining like 10 strokes tee to green each week.
Yeah, he's definitely been the most consistent with the ball striking. So he feels probably the safest out of those three. But boy, that's a pretty steep price for
super ridiculous. I'm with you. I think a lot of people are. If I had to pick of the four, it would be Niemann. We've just seen more from him. The game has come back. All these guys, I mean, they're going to have ups and downs. But I think for most people, and I'll get right to it, the 9K range, I mean, these are at least guys that we've seen for a while. Sungjae Im is someone, 9,700. As we talk about every week, he doesn't take weeks off. So he's playing once again. I feel confident, though. The game is coming back. Not really knocking on the door, but at the same time, starting to get into contention little by little. And you're getting a real savings. I would much prefer to start with him than any of these guys up top.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be a boring show because we're just going to agree.
It's going to be bad.
All the way down the line. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. It seemed like at the beginning of the season, he was the next big thing. And now, 6 months later, it's like he's old news as well. But yeah, you go back to the beginning of the season, he was the guy that came in with all the hype off the great web.com season, or Corn Ferry season. I don't know what do we call it when it was last year?
Yeah, that's retro Corn Ferry. I don't know if do we give it the web.com homage? I guess.
Yeah, we'll just call it the web.com. But yeah, he came in with, the pretty big hype, and we've seen it out of him. He plays so much. I feel like we've seen a lot of ebbs and flows in his game. But it's coming back around 15th, 21st, and 7th in his last four. Ball striking decent, but he putts well. And I think that's something we maybe should talk about. I generally don't focus on putting, but I feel like at a birdie fest, at an event that's really going to almost give you off the tee, it's going to give you a fairway hit. There's not a lot of challenges off the tee. It's going to become like a short iron and a putting contest. So I don't love to focus on putting, but it does seem like a week where you're going to have to hole some putts, and going with truly terrible putters, I don't know if that's going to work. So he's around 50th in strokes gained putting on the season at 56th. So decent putter. The ball striking has been decent. Yeah, I'm with you. I like him. And he's 22-1. I mean, basically the same odds as Niemann, shorter than Wolf, close to Morikawa. It seems like by Vegas terms, you're getting a discount on him as well.
And it's not to say, like I said, I want to be clear. I think, like most people, especially now that those three up top are going to be staples and they're all going to win a lot and we're going to see them for a long time. But when we step back, in reality, we've only seen a small sliver of what these guys do. And you talked about this, I think actually with Wyndham Clark, about, we look at their stats and we just assume what they start out at is how they play. Like, oh, this guy's an incredible putter or he's an incredible ball striker. Maybe it's just a small sample size and we don't really have the full set yet. So I'm still going to lean to known commodities. I know those guys have a ton of talent, and it's not to say I won't use them. But Sungjae, we've seen. CH3, Brian Harmon is starting to play better. I was on him pretty heavy last week. And these are guys that, the recency bias is really strong up top. I'm more apt to take a couple of them and save some money.
Yeah, and then you also have to think about if you pay 10.5 to 10.9 for Hovland, Morikawa, Wolf, I mean, what finish do you need out of these guys to pay that off? I mean, you need a very good finish. A T15 isn't going to cut it for the most expensive player in the field.
No.
Yeah, and I mean that's not a bad finish by any of those guys. So I'm not saying, and I know you're not saying, wow, fade, they're horrible, but just for the price, I mean, what you need to pay that off, I mean, you need a really, really good finish out of guys that we just haven't seen a ton of. And I mean, the course doesn't fit, but I think these guys will make it fit. But that's not as much what I'm worried about. It's more of the price and kind of a small sample size of what we've seen out of these top guys.
It's just a huge ask. I mean, we saw last week, obviously these guys can contend, they can win. But I don't know if they're so much better than the rest of these guys when we're talking about, staples, guys with multiple wins on tour. I mean, for the rest of the 9K range, you got guys like Berger, Ryan Moore, Sam Burns, who's actually playing pretty well. Is there other names in there that kind of pique your interest?
Yeah, Burns is interesting just because he can putt, and you've brought that up a couple times. The ball striking has been getting better, plus 6.2 with the ball striking last week. That's really good. 37 strokes gained putting on the season. He's another guy, and it seems like a lot of these young guys, it's like a lot of off the tee. Wyndham Clark's the same thing. A lot of off the tee, not good approach game, and good short game. So I don't know. I'd love to see guys with a little bit better approach game. That's the only thing that scares me. But maybe in the Rahm mold of, hey, if you're that good off the tee, you really don't need to be as good on approach. But yeah, I can get behind Sam Burns, Ryan Moore.
I'm with you. Disturbing.
So last week he missed the cut again. The week before he was awful. Last week almost gained a stroke on approach. He lost 4.3 strokes putting in 2 rounds. He was abysmal. I don't know. He feels like the type of player, if he was in better form, like a Snedeker type that could win this event. But boy, he's been bad. But I like the course fit for him. If no one's going to play him, I might have some of them. But
he's a winner here, is he not?
Yeah, he's won here. He's got a 7th and 8th. Yeah, I mean this is his type of event. Weak field birdie fest.
Him and ZJ.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't. ZJ, that guy feels like it's been forever since he's had like a top 10.
No. Yeah, that is not my bag. I'll go to Sam Burns. I've been playing him. I'm not going to jump off now. Crazy good putter. But just talked about this. Crazy good off the tee. When he holds it together with the other two, he's dangerous. I woke up, I wasn't really paying attention Sunday, and then I looked and he was like 8 under. These guys can go ridiculously low, and you're going to see that this week. Once again, it's just trying to separate, weighing obviously the ownership and seeing what we can do in terms of opportunity costs, because you can't play all of them. As we work down, now we start to stabilize, and this is usually they're all obviously cheaper than we see, but this is a pretty typical standard PGA Tour range. We start with Kevin Tway. We got guys like Stanley, Ryan Palmer. We work down to the Bucket Hat Man and Dahman, Duffner, Nick Watney. I mean, this is more your JDC feel when we really think about it.
Oh yeah. Do you want to talk about Stanley, or should I kick it off?
Well, yeah, I'll just say he's in the Open, so I'm a little confused at why he's here. That's one of the many problems. But I'll pass it right back to you. You mentioned putting fest. Doesn't exactly scream to Kyle Stanley, who might be the worst putter on tour.
That's a typical Tim type of play. Like mentions one thing and then just plays the exact opposite type of.
What we do here?
I like him. The finishes haven't been there, but the ball striking has been, and that's kind of what I like. I think people will be on him this week, sharper people that are kind of looking behind the numbers. But, if you go back to the Masters where he was T21, he's gaining 3.3 strokes with the ball striking, and that's over 7 starts. Even in the missed cuts, the ball striking has been good. His last 3 starts, he's gaining 4.5 strokes ball striking. So, the last 3 events. And it was T21, T36, T65. These aren't great finishes, but the ball striking's been there. The putting just has, and he's had some really atrocious putting performances. Lost 6.7 putting at the U.S. Open, but I just think for the type of player that he is long term, I think he's a much better player than 8.8K in this field when you're looking at guys like Hovland, Morikawa, Wolf being 2K more expensive than him. And the ball striking's been great. The putting hasn't been. I mean, I can live with that. You know, you never know who's going to go crazy with the putter, Michael Kim last year or whatever. So I think for the ball striking for the price, I like Stanley.
Yeah, I like Stanley too. Chad, I see it. If you could let us know which one of apparently one of our volumes is low. I'm not sure. It's on my end, on your end, but we'll see. It's this tournament. What can I say? JDC really brings out the best in the show. Um, I'll echo you on Stanley though. I like him. I get it. I'm concerned about the putting. Um, both. All right. Well, we'll work on that. Um, Anybody else in the range? I mean, Ryan Palmer, I looked at. Eh, another bad putter. Bud Cauley, crafty around the green, but not the best putter once again. It's tough to really try to nail guys who, you can look at the putting stats, but at the end of the day, we saw Lucas Glover gain 6 strokes putting last week.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly why I don't waste a lot of time and effort trying to find great putters, because you don't really know who's going to bring it from week to week. Like you said, terrible putters can gain 6-7 strokes putting, ton of variance involved. There's not a lot I like in the 8K range besides Stanley. I think the 7K range is loaded. I think there's a ton of plays there. So yeah, I think Stanley's probably my only play out of the 8K range.
Yeah, and we're all good, Tim. I think we resolved it after we got past Kyle Stanley here. I had mentioned last week, I didn't know where Dahmen was. He actually has been playing. He's just been playing pretty bad. Do you have any interest there?
No, I mean, I think this could be a good spot for him, but just the numbers that I've looked at really hasn't stuck out at all. I mean, it seems like a good fit when we've seen Dahmen play well. It seems like a place where he would do well, but not much interest for me.
Yeah, Nasty Nate, Scott Brown. I mean, the guy, another one, and I talk about a terrible putter. Duffner is a guy that I always like to target on courses where it really doesn't demand length. But man, in the past couple of weeks, I've looked to really get there with him. He's shown some signs, but he's just not putting it all together. Not sure I'll have much. Obviously, I think you can get over with a decent clip. You're not going to have to leverage a ton. But Duffner's been one of the more disappointing guys. I just feel, we can start looking at 2019 as a whole now. We're late in the season, guys. Time to get it going is long past.
Yeah, Duffner was a guy that I was on maybe a month ago. It looked like the ball striking was kind of trending in the right direction. But like you said, the putter has been abysmal, and yeah, he just hasn't been getting it done for me. The name recognition at 8,100 in this field on this course seems nice, but yeah, there just hasn't been much there lately.
It's bad. Chad asked about Martin Laird. I will say, if you're looking at a pure stats play, at the 3M, he gained 6.5 strokes on the approach, lost 5 putting, which, I mean, him and Fratelli both did that basically. That's an easy buy spot if you think that obviously the putter should be better. Can he sustain those irons? That's a tough ask, but I have no problem with it. I'm not looking at in a priority sense, but 8,200 feels like a pretty fair price.
Yeah, he was good last week. I don't know if I'll get there this week, but yeah, definitely the ball striking at the 3M stuck out to me. But like you said, can he keep it up? I don't know. Some of these guys, we see it all the time. Guy gains 6-7 shots on approach one week, and then it's just like kind of like a one-hit wonder. We don't see that again for the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's but man, I mean, the other thing, I know we're going to keep saying this, these guys feel, it's like, oh, okay, I could play a couple. They're going to probably be in the top half of your roster, which is crazy. Like, we haven't even begun to work down. Obviously, we'll crash into the 7K range here. We started with Mac Hughes. We got Malnati, Burgoon. I mean, just all the characters. I don't see a ton that really stand out. I guess for me, I'll go first. What am I going to say? Peter Malnati, obviously, elite putter, been playing better. His big leak is off the tee, and you talked about this at the top of the show. That should be somewhat mitigated here.
Yeah, I'm going to keep plugging away with Peter Malnati. He doesn't – I mean, we're going to get to a handful of guys here that have been the exact same price for about 3 weeks and have had decent results. I mean, obviously they haven't had great results, so they would be more expensive, but – there's guys, I mean, Malnati, we've been playing for 3 or 4 weeks in a row in the mid-7s, and this is a much weaker field. He's been consistent. Like you said, very good putter. He still just hasn't quite putted, over his last about 6 events, just slightly above break even, which for him is not good. He's, over the past 3 or 4 years been, a top 20 putter almost year in and year out. And the approach game's been good. He's gained at least a stroke on approach in 6 straight events. So positive approach game, 6 straight events. Like you said, we're not a demanding course off the tee. And the putter, I think, the putter gets hot and we're in business. I know we've been saying this for 4 weeks in a row, but I mean, he hasn't killed us. His price hasn't gone up, and this is a much weaker field, and it's a good course fit.
Sign me up. Yeah, I mean, the guy who's most interesting in this range, not in terms of that I love the play, is JT Poston. We saw him.
What are you talking about? You love him.
Well, let's not get crazy. I do love him, but I worry a little bit about a hangover. He was in the final group, really just didn't get it done. He fell way back. Obviously, he's playing pretty good golf. He's a good putter, more strength off the tee than with the irons, which is a little concerning. I'm not to say I'm not going to still use him, but I don't know. He didn't stand out as much as I wanted him to the more I dug. I think I'm going to roll some of the shares to your boy Taylor Gooch. Obviously, for Telly, 7,600. I will be playing him. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, he was on fire last week with the ball striking. The putter.
Not with the putter.
No, the putter was abysmal. Yeah, that was really disappointing. I mean, that was just kind of what you hope for. It's like, all right, we're gaining I don't know what he gained, probably 8 strokes with the ball striking last week, something around there. And it was, the putting was just awful. Lost 5 strokes putting. But Gooch is that guy. I don't know. He has some really awful performances, and then he mixes in just like this amazing iron performance once in a while, but he's a bad putter too. So he kind of scares me between the sporadic iron play and the terrible putting. I don't know if I can get there. Tringali to me is literally just put him in the same mold as Malnati. Another guy who's performed well for weeks in a row. The price just really hasn't gone up. The approach game has been really good, averaging 2.8 strokes approach in his last 5 events. I mean, that's really prolonged period of really good iron play. And the price just isn't going up, and this is an awful field. I mean, this feels like an event he can contend in,
Oh, it's wide open. Chat's talking about that right now. There is no doubt it's wide open. It's just you want to be careful because there's 70 guys where you're like, oh yeah, they could contend in this garbage field. Yeah, probably, but you don't want to do that. You can rake yourself in a hurry. Cameron Champ, yeah, that's a no for me, dog. Sam Ryder. Now we get into the mid-7s. You have him. I've seen people mention Varner throughout the week. Troy Merritt. People ask us about him all the time. We never play him. He's always pretty good, though. I don't have much, though. Is there anything else before we move a little towards the bottom of the 7K range?
No, not really. Sam Ryder's interesting. The ball striking and approach game has been decent, but it seems a little. I thought he'd be cheaper, to be honest with you. I think you can just get a more quality player at this price range. I mean, he kind of stuck out to me before pricing came out, but I would have thought he'd be 6,900 in this field. I think he's getting a bump from that runner-up last year, which I don't like. I don't put any stock into that. So maybe a little overpriced based on coming in second here last year. But you're not getting – the ball striking hasn't been that good to warrant 7,500 for me. Much rather go up a little bit with Malnati or Tringali.
Malnati's just what a goat.
We're just gonna ride him into the ground.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to the moon. It's going to the ground. It's just we do what we can. So as we work down a bit, a couple guys I want to throw out there. Chad asked about Sepp Straka. He's another one. He had a string where he's crushing it tee to green, couldn't putt. Then he started to make some putts, got a couple good showings, and now, I don't want to say he's in limbo. It's just kind of hard to look where his game. He missed the cut last week after that good Rocket Mortgage. I feel fine with him. I think it's pretty confident that he's going to gain tee to green. You're going to need him to putt better, though. At a birdie fest, you can't get by with the Benny On formula of just missing 90% of your 15-footers.
Yeah, I mean, he legitimately gains strokes ball striking every single week.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so he's going to gain strokes off the tee. He's going to gain strokes on approach. This week there shouldn't be much emphasis put on around the green game, but you're going to need to make putts. And I mean, some of these guys, the putter's going to come for some of these guys. I don't think you want to jam in 6 awful putters because they're not all going to find it on the same week. But I like Strzok. I mean, 7,300 I think is a decent price. The ball striking's been really good, but there's other guys I like in this range. He wouldn't be my go-to, and yeah, I mean, you're gonna need to putt. I mean, you might catch lightning in a bottle with one or two of these guys, but I wouldn't go too crazy with the terrible putters this week.
Agree. Like we've seen time and time again, bad putters get hot for a stretch, but to ask 4 or 5 of the bottom 10% putters on tour all to putt good on the same week, it just seems like a ridiculous, and you need them to obviously continue the ball striking. So that's a tough sell. God, I mean, looking down, I looked at Nick Taylor pretty closely. He's a guy that off the tee to me is almost, I don't say it's irrelevant, but it's just not going to define the week. I like the rest of his game. He's made 4 or 5 straight cuts, playing pretty well. And we are getting to the range. At least these guys are quote unquote, somewhat salary savers. They're not burning a ton of equity, a ton of roster construction. I don't really mind going to the guys in the low sevens. It's just a matter of what are you paying up for? Like it better be to get something up top because this is pretty bad already.
Yeah, it gets bad pretty quickly down here. Can I take a small victory lap on Joey Garber last week? I mean, I think you laughed at me when I brought him up, and
that sounds like something I would do with Joey Garber. Yep.
And I think he shot 3 consecutive 66s. He was awful on Thursday, but he ain't 8.2 strokes with the ball striking last week. That was really good. 5.1 the week before at the Rocket Mortgage. He's gained at least 3.5 strokes with the ball striking in 4 out of his 5 events. For the year, off the tee game is better, but the approach game has been kind of trending. I mean, he's been really good. I don't know if people will be on him or not. It's kind of hard to back up the finish that he had last week. The name recognition just isn't there. But the ball striking has been really good for about 5 events in a row, and he's still not that expensive. So I don't know if I'm going to get back to him, but I'm not right very often. So when I am right on a loan guy, I got to take a money.
That's what we do on the show. Because next words out of my mouth, we're about to take another victory lap, and I'm appreciate chat bringing this up. Zach just mentioned we were both not on Doc Redman at all. And when he made his 9, that ended everyone pretty quickly. But I will say I have obviously a lot more intrigue in him this week. Last week I thought was a terrible spot. And truth be told, he blew up on a hole. That happens. I certainly was happy to see it. But with all that water, it's a lot of variance. I have no problem going back to him. It's going to be a fraction of the ownership that we saw. But we got to take that victory lap as well. Johnson Wagner, yay or nay? I've seen the name a lot this week.
No, I mean, he's just not good. The course history is really good. That's going to attract a lot of people. For me, that's just a automatic fade. Whenever somebody is drawn to a player like almost strictly on course history, that's a fade for me. I don't know. Yeah, course fit is good, but no thanks.
Fair enough. Well, we've reached the part of the program where Russell Henley, it's his price range. He is 7,100. He is awful at golf. What say you? Do you have any interest in him? I'm not even sure I'll get there.
Did you look at the numbers from last week, though?
Oh, I did. But there's a real question to ask. Like, is he even a good putter anymore? What is going on?
He forgot how to play. Maybe he has the yips.
Him and Charlie Hoffman. Charlie Hoffman not being in this tournament is the only positive that I can take because at least I'm live for 6 of 6 now. That guy, he's worse than. Continue. Talk about Henley, please.
So I got a tip of the hat to my boy Ryan Baroff, who it's up to me because he said Henley, and I'm like, no way, he's been terrible. And he's like, look at the numbers, and he gained 4.4 strokes ball striking off the tee on approach together in 2 rounds last week. He missed the cut, and he lost 4.7 on and around the green. So yeah, there's definitely there's a lot of questions with him because he's been awful.
I got questions. Yep.
Does he have the yips? Does he have something going on? But the ball striking was really good. And for 7,100 in this field, a guy that's won, what has he won? He's won the Sony, he's won the Honda, he's won
Shell.
Houston. Yeah, I mean, this is a multiple time winner. Seems like it would be a good course fit if he wasn't completely lost. But yeah, no, I'm definitely going to take some shots because I think people are going to see all these miscuts in a row and gloss right over him. But yeah, he should have made the cut last week if he wasn't just atrocious on and around the greens.
Chad, I want you to remember, because usually when people play Henley and it goes horribly wrong, it is my fault. This is Fantasy Golf Man's fault because I was trying to beat, and you're going to end up sucking me into him. I will say, and this is sharp call by our chat, Roger Sloan is 7,100. He's playing very well. He looked, gaining strokes everywhere last week. No problem with that. I mean, this is a range. You're either going to take a guy like Henley, who clearly in a macro view, if he gets back to form, is wildly underpriced. I understand why he's down here. Or you're going to take some guys that aren't the most talented players in the world, but maybe they're playing, towards their potential. Someone like Roger Sloan, who's been good. That's really all I have for the sevens. Anything else before we get into the basement?
No, I did just want to note this is the first time of the year I've actually given my stamp of approval on Henley. All those other miscuts,
No, those were all me.
I was on the other side of that, so we just want to have. I need that on the record. So.
It's true. I mean, Russell Henley, the problem with him is that, well, he only plays 2 rounds a week, but one of his rounds, you're like, oh, he's 5-6 under. Then the other one is just a birdie-free 77, and it's like, I don't know what really is going on there. God, it is tempting though. I mean, I totally get why you'd be drawn to it. I've been trying to ride the wave with him, and it's just not working. So we'll have to see. I think you can get over with not that much. I do want to say real quick, obviously I say this every week, if you haven't signed up and you're interested, hop on in right before the British Open. You can use the promo code JazzRaz. Another thing, my article is in front of the paywall this week. So if you want to read more about the John Deere Classic, just hop on in. You don't need to be a premium member for that. You do most weeks, but this week it is not. So jump in and take a look at some of these guys, a little more in-depth preview. Other than that, now we really are forced. I've tried to delay it, Tim. Bill Haas time, 6,900. What a world. I mean, you're going to have to, if you pay up for a couple guys, just like any week, you're going to have to dive into the sixes. Do you have anyone that you feel even remotely comfortable with up here?
This is why I don't plan on paying up exactly right here. Not only are the guys at the top too expensive and we don't know anything about it, you don't want to go down here. But yeah, there's a couple. I like Streb at 6,900. The approach game has been really good with him. I think he's a little bit underpriced, averaging 1.2 strokes per round on approach. I mean, that's elite approach game over his last 4 starts. So 4 really good approach events in a row, and like we said, that's going to be super important this week. Yeah, he seems a little bit underpriced for me, so he would be my first guy at 6,900. But yeah, there's not a lot else I like down here.
All right, well, I'm gonna throw a couple names at you because Chad's brought him up, and I totally see it. First guy, he made a splash. I believe it was in Detroit, and it's Wes Roach. It's a guy that I didn't know much about. Yeah, he was 3rd at Rocket Mortgage. He rebounded with a miscut last week, but if you look at the numbers, he struck it pretty good again. He just lost 4 strokes putting. Not going to be owned. Obviously, he's very cheap, and he was 11th in Canada as well. So he's had some form lately. Any interest there, or is it just you don't want to be digging this deep?
I mean, I touted him and played him last week, and he was bad.
It wasn't.
It's really hard with a guy like that who has no pedigree. We really haven't seen him do much on tour at all. And then he breaks through with maybe 2 performances that are decent, or 1 really good ball striking performance, which I think is what we saw at the Rocket Mortgage, where I think he led the field in tee to green. But yeah, not much interest. Maybe I just have a sour taste from playing him last week and getting that missed cut. So a little recency bias on my part, but I don't think I'm going to get there.
Fair enough. So I don't want to say that this guy is going to be chalk. We obviously will have ownership tomorrow night. Me and Jason Roslin will break it all down and try to incorporate that a little more. But someone that, if you're looking at the stats, that's going to catch your eye is Adam Svensson. Just ungodly ball striking last week. His name had been floated around. He had a million string of missed cuts, but he was striking it well. Normally I'd say, oh, the putter heated up. It was actually just even worse, but it didn't matter. Everything else was ridiculous. What do you make of that? I mean, obviously, if he putts at a flat 0, he's going to be ahead of the game.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are amazing. I mean, so let's just talk about approach. Let's just take off the tee out of it. Plus 3.7 last week, plus 3.6 at the Rocket Mortgage where he missed the cut. The Travelers, he wasn't great. And then he was plus 3.9 at the Canadian Open where he missed the cut. I mean, this is in 2 rounds. He's like a poor man's Corey Connors at this point. I don't know. I like. I mean, he's 30th in strokes gained tee to green on the year, on the whole tour. I mean, it's amazing. Like you said, he's good around the green as well. The putter is just awful.
Really bad.
I like him. If he's gonna be chalky though, seems like a pretty easy fade at a place where you're gonna need to putt.
That's my one thing. That's someone I totally see the play, but there are just other guys that I will take at a 10th of the ownership. If that's going to really be a situation, I have him close. Maybe he's slightly ahead, but in certain situations, I'll pivot to guys. You look at Bozzelli. He's a guy can get crazy hot with the putter. Even I'm not saying pivot to Curtis Luck because Curtis Luck is really, really struggling, but he's another world-class putter. That's the only thing he does well, and I like to try to mention him when I can. Boy, other than that,
Luke
though,
Donald, world-class putter.
well, that's a little different, but he is a world-class putter. Did you see? I don't know if you were paying attention Friday. Did you see Cam Davis move the cut?
No, I'd given up on golf at that point.
It was.
I saw after the fact. I was like, "What? Why are people talking about Cam Davis on my time?" I'm like,
it was really awful. I really needed that cut at -4. Just don't double bogey the last hole, and he tripled it, and he missed the cut himself, so it was just a full punishment.
was he in the last group?
Oh, he was the last guy. Yep. It was down to Cam Davis, and he needed to not make a double bogey. That was the scenario. And he put it in the bunker, and then he left it in the bunker. He might still be in the bunker. It was bad. Boy, that's so sick. I mean, you look down here, I will say that Stuart Sink, his name always stands out when I scroll because I'm like, oh, Stuart Sink, he's like 7K in majors and stuff. But the form is so bad that I think it's actually a pretty easy pass for me still.
Yeah, I mean, there was last year, maybe the year before, he was kind of sneaky because he would strike the ball really well, and you would think, Sink's over the hill. But yeah, he just hasn't had it this year, so not much interest for me.
Yeah, there's not much. I know people, well, I guess this is the last guy I'll throw out, and then, we can kind of wrap it up and talk a little about the betting market. But Chad Campbell is just the JDC god. I assume he fits into your, if you're just playing a guy strictly on course history, don't do it narrative, or what?
Yeah, no, I'm not getting there. Yeah, the course history is really good for him. I guess he's been very consistent here, but
yeah, I mean, when you only make, I mean, he just, since the John Deere, his best finish was 37th. He's got about 10 missed cuts. And before the JDC, he had about 10 missed cuts. It's just not, I'm not looking for that in my mind.
No, I mean, and does he have any upside at all? I don't think he does.
Then again, I mean, I guess we should say, and you don't want to be chasing this, but if Michael can win in dominating fashion, that really is the longer we go, the most ridiculous outlier ever.
How many strokes putting did he gain last year? Wasn't it like 14 or something on the week?
It was like extreme. I mean, he was 27 under, I think. It was a lot. It was bad.
What about Tom Hoagie?
No, that's a pass for me. Do you have any interest?
I mean, the approach game's been decent. I guess he's down here at a reasonable price. If I had to go down here, he would probably be one of the guys I would lean towards. But
so you would lean over, and absolutely one of your boys, Roberto Castro?
He can't putt. I mean,
Bad putter. Great ball striker, though.
No idea. I mean, people are probably looking up Hoagie's putting stats right now, and he might be worse. I don't even, to be honest, I don't even know if Hoagie's a good putter or not. I
I
like
don't think he
Castro. The
is.
approach game has been decent, but yeah, I don't know. No, I don't think I can play. He's just a god awful putter. Doesn't just seem to fare well at the birdie fests, in my opinion.
All right. I have Michael Kim's stats here. He gained, 13 and a half strokes putting. That'll get it
And I
done.
feel like he had like 12, like through. It was like he had the tournament put away.
Oh, he was cruising
Yeah.
for a long, long time. Last guy, and it's a fitting last guy. Chat wants to know your thoughts on Richie Orinsky. You don't have any?
It. I don't know what happened to him. He was a guy, and I think I've said this a couple times, where every 5 or 6 tournaments he would have an elite performance with the ball striking, and that's what kept me coming back to him, because it seemed like erratic, but it was there somewhere, and if you got him on the right week, you would get paid off. But yeah, it just hasn't been there at all this year. The ball striking, he hasn't had those really top level performances like we see out of a Taylor Gooch or Corey Connors or guys like that. It hasn't been good. So no, I think he's a fade.
Probably for me too. And he's one of those guys, just to kind of hit this point again, I feel like, and I'm included in this, you took a limited sample size, and I think everyone had kind of a profile of who he was, and now he's not really fitting that anymore. It's kind of, he's in no man's land of like what he does. He can get crazy hot. There's no doubt about it. But it's tough to trust a guy when you're really trying to bank on one of these outlier iron performances.
It turns out his profile is just a really terrible golfer. Like,
yeah, so he's in the Bill Haas bucket.
Miley Kaufman would be his comp or something.
That's not good for anyone. Yeah, I mean, truth be told, I don't think you want to reach this low. I'll obviously take bigger looking at it, chat. If you're back tomorrow night, feel free to fire them up in the egregious round where me and Jason Roslin talk about these type of guys. Yeah, I've never seen a 300 to 1 on a defending champ. That's insane. But did you brave the waters and bet this thing?
Yeah, I'm betting Stanley. I'm sorry. He's a terrible putter, but who knows who's going to gain strokes putting from week to week. I mean, 50 to 1, I think that's really good price.
I like the number too. Yep.
I mean, I don't think we can overstate how bad this field is. And I mean, I think it's an exciting week because I think the guys at the top, these young guys, I think it's going to be fun. It's almost like a future stars game or something, to give these guys the spotlight. And I think they're all going to be great players. But for them to be headlining this field from a betting perspective is crazy. So it's wide open event. And I mean, 50 to 1 is a decent number for Stanley. And I mean, this is not a good field. I like him, and I like Streb at 150 to 1. It's been a while since we've seen him really play well. A couple of years ago, he had a really good run, and it's kind of been not so good. But yeah, the approach game has been really good, and that's really what we're banking on this week. It's like hit it close and see who can make the most putts.
It's wide open. I mean, this is not, every week we talk about the top and the equity. Like, I don't think that there's that much equity up top in any regard, in the sense that we don't really know yet. I know these guys are, again, I keep saying this, mega talented, but really, I mean, if one of those three don't win, and I think considering they have combined one win and it was last week, they've only been out here for 2 weeks combined at this point. But my God, it's wide open for guys like Brian Harman, Stanley. I think if I was going to take a short price, Sanjay Im, if I was going to take one of them, I don't know why, his numbers dropped. I think it was around 30. Now I saw it at 25, maybe even lower at this point. It's tough, but all in all for me, and again, we'll touch on this tomorrow night again. The Scottish Open is where I'm more allocating for the betting markets. There's a ton of guys over there, much better tournament. This is one, I think you take a couple names, you're going to get good odds on guys, and there's really no defense up top. It's wide open for anyone to really make a splash.
I mean, Matthew Wolff does win one out of every 4 PGA Tour events.
He's got 25% covered. So that's going to be tricky to overcome. What can we say? Man, this is just poor Panda. All these guys just panned out, and the Panda just, times are tough. But
nobody, it's like, it doesn't matter. In this business, it doesn't matter when you tout the panda relentlessly and he turns out to be terrible. It doesn't
No,
matter. You just go on to the next guy. Now it's
there's
like, oh, yeah,
always a new guy with an animal nickname on this tour. Don't worry about it. You just keep plugging them away. But I think we're going to get out of here. You have any final thoughts before we bounce on out on what is one of the worst weeks of the entire year?
no, I disagree. This is
I know you do. I had to get that in
the
there.
guys at the top have saved this event, really. I mean, imagine how bad it would be if these guys just came on tour and they all missed their first 4 cuts. I mean, we would literally there'd be nothing to talk about. Just really interested to see how they play the course. This has been a course that's favored the old guys forever, but it's just a different era on tour. So I'm just kind of excited to see how they attack the course. If it, how it plays. Is it still going to favor some of these old guys? I don't think it will, but who knows? I'm just kind of, I think it's a blessing that these guys just turned up how they did.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, nobody would want to talk about, watch, or play DFS for this event.
No, I think it's a fascinating thing. And obviously 1 week is not going to determine it all. But like you said, this is a situation. I don't want to say it's a changing of the guard, but we got these new guys and they play a certain style. Rahm did this, not to go on a tangent, but there were a couple courses. I think Valspar comes to mind where Rahm was just like, you know what, I'm pulling driver. I don't care. And he just kind of bucked the narrative of how you have to play these courses. These kids, I assume that they're going to be way more aggressive than we've seen. Maybe that works. Maybe it doesn't. That's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, and I think it can work because it's weird. Even though this course has favored the short hitters, it's not a tight course. It's not like you look at like Harbor Town and you're like, yeah, I can see why the short hitters really do well here because the damn fairways are narrow. There's a lot of trouble. The greens are tiny. That's not this place. So I mean, yeah, if these guys want to hit driver, maybe they can kind of flip the script on how this course should be played. So yeah, it'll be a fun week, I think.
It will. Chat, thanks for sticking with us through the technical difficulties, debatably at one point. And for this week in general, we'll be back next week. Northern Ireland, we get Portrush, the British Open. Obviously, if you have any questions, find us on Twitter, find us in Slack. And I'll be back tomorrow night with Jason Roslin. For all you baseball people, enjoy the All-Star game, and we hope to see you here next week. Good luck.